He's the greatest hellraiser in rock history, and he seems to be unstoppable.
As the mayor of Hollywood, I hereby declare this Ozzy Osbourne Day in Hollywood.
Celebrities, Hollywood stars, Ozzy Osbourne.
I had no idea that when I left Sabbath that I would go on to do bigger and better things, and then add the TV show and the star on Hollywood Boulevard. It's more than I'm expecting to wake up and go, bing! It's all been an incredible dream.
Once described as every mother's worst nightmare, Ozzy is now welcome in every home. From the White House to Buckingham Palace, where he sang for the Queen at her Golden Jubilee concert.
I think Ozzy was more amazed than anybody when he was asked to appear for the Queen at her Golden Jubilee concert. It was quite a respectable lineup until that point. It was people like Sir Paul McCartney, Rod Stewart, and suddenly out of the blue, Ozzy was asked to appear and sing Paranoid. And it came just a few weeks after he'd been invited by President Bush to the White House. And as Ozzy said when he received that invitation, I thought I'd be on a wanted poster on his wall, not invited to his house for tea. He can't quite believe that he's become so respectable that he is invited to the White House and the Palace. And you know, he was overjoyed. He was very proud, and the crowd went absolutely wild and just loved it, because what's great about Ozzy is that although there's an element of him that has become respectable, he's never respectable enough that you can totally trust him. You never quite know what he's going to do. And when he walked on the stage at the Palace, everybody watched to see, would he behave himself, would he swear, would he say something he shouldn't. And apparently emerged afterwards that he'd actually knelt in the wings before he went on stage, saying a prayer, praying that he wouldn't swear. So you never quite know what you're going to get with Ozzy.
I mean, somebody says to me, are you ever going to write the book? And I mean, I've got a fucking library in my head, but it's remembering it in chronological order. I mean, the one thing that I regret not doing is keeping a journal, you know. My story is fucking very unique. When I started in 1968, and if somebody said to me, you know, in the year 2001, you're going to be doing this and you're going to be doing that, I'm going, what the fuck is it, you know?
But someone else has been taking notes. For nearly 30 years, Stephen Rosen has been following Ozzy's life.
I started writing for Guitar Player in '73, and it was in '74 they said, you want to go to St. Louis and do a story with Black Sabbath? And I said, that would be unbelievable. And I remember telling myself that when I walked through the door to their hotel room, part of me said that the thing that we saw Black Sabbath portraying, the devil stuff, and I said that's not going to be there. I'm not going to see that. But a part of me said that there could be some strange stuff going on here. In any event, I knocked on the door and all four guys were sitting there, and they were just unbelievable. I mean, from the first moment I met them, I don't know what it was. I'd met a lot of musicians before then and since then, and there was just something very, and I don't know if people would use this word to describe Ozzy and the rest of these guys, there was something very sweet about the guy. He was pretty drunk. They were all doing drugs. And if truth be known, I joined them a little bit, you know, but it wasn't a belligerent thing. It's like the more they drank, the more open they got. And it was just like they had a show to do in an hour. And Ozzy, I remember Ozzy just sitting there on the bed for as long as I wanted to talk to him. He was going to sit there and answer my questions, you know. He was just unbelievable.
Little did he know just how up close and personal he was soon to get with Ozzy and Black Sabbath.
I think Ozzy and the band were trying to bring me into the fold, as it were. After their show at the hotel, we went back to the hotel. I had my own room, and I hear a knock on the door, and I open the door, and it's Tony, and he has a fire hydrant that he's pulled off the wall in the hallway, and there's a huge hole in the hallway of the hotel. Comes into the room, sprays everything in the room, my room, that I'm responsible for, with this fire hydrant. I must admit, I thought it was pretty unbelievable. I mean, if you're gonna trash a room, you're gonna trash it with Black Sabbath. I mean, part of me thought, I'm gonna have to pay for this, and part of me thought, I really don't care. He comes in, he does this, sprays me, sprays the entire room. Ozzy and the rest of the band come down. Ozzy sets fire to the couch. I mean, we're talking a serious fire here with his lighter. Sets fire to the couch. The fire's now burning. The sprinklers come on in the room. We push the couch out into the hallway. I thought, well, I've got to get my lick in. So I take the television, hotel television, bolted to the wall or to some kind of a platform. I rip the television off and I throw it out in the hallway, and we proceeded to trash the entire hotel. I mean, we broke mirrors. We were doing drugs in there. They had to bring up, I don't know if it was a fireman who came up to put out this fire, because this couch was really burning. The alarms were going off. Some women showed up. They knew Sabbath was there. And there was 2 girls, and these 2 women, they joined the party. They got naked, and it was everything you read about. And for a young journalist to trash a hotel room with Sabbath, I mean, I gotta tell you, it was one of the highlights of my life. It was fun, you know. And at the end, when I was checking out, they said, well, you have a bill here of, I don't know what it was. It was $5,000. I thought, bill it to the magazine. I didn't have $5,000. Sabbath ended up paying that bill. Obviously, it was letting off energy. They had the money to do it. Nobody got hurt. It was all in good fun. But I really believe they were trying to show me, hey, you're cool. You're the new kid, you know, and I know you're doing a story for Guitar Player, you know, and we want to let you know that we really appreciate that. I believe that's what it was. And it goes through to everything I've been saying about Ozzy and those guys. They're just very sweet guys. Which isn't said they're quiet or low-key, but just everything they do is kind of generated from a good place, you know. They're not evil, they're not mean people, which is why they've always been some of my favorite people in the whole world to interview over and over.
The odds seemed stacked against Ozzy ever realising his dream, escaping his destiny.
Yeah, the way to go, the way I was brought up, it was you get reared, you get a job, you go to the pub, you get married, you spend your weekends in the pub, and then got to work until you die. You know, have kids, and then carrying life, and life goes on, and the kids support you when you're older, kind of thing, which was a pretty grim outlook.
In Aston, then a very poor district of Birmingham in England, John Michael Osbourne was born on the 3rd of December 1948. Often hungry and with only one set of clothes each, Ozzy and his 2 brothers and 3 sisters all had to share one of the 2 bedrooms here at 14 Lodge Road.
I think it was a typical Birmingham working class relationship that boys had with their fathers at that time. His father adored his son, but was quite strict with him and would beat him if Ozzy misbehaved. But that was common, you know, that was the norm in those days. And very close, and I think Ozzy respected his dad and was very, very close to him in his childhood and throughout his life.
Ozzy sometimes fondly refers to his parents as the talented singer and the amateur drunk, but both worked hard to support their large family. His mother Lillian assembled circuit boards here at Lucas Electrical, while his father Jack was a toolmaker at the company's car plant. Ozzy hated school, where he was regarded as a slow learner and a troublemaker. He was, in fact, extremely dyslexic, a condition that went undiagnosed and untreated at the time. Ozzy also suffered from attention deficit disorder, and he alternated between acute shyness and belligerence.
discovered a lot about his childhood, which kind of now explains a lot about the man he is today. He had a very troubled childhood. When he was just 12 years old, he went on a trip to his aunt's with his mum, and his mum was sunbathing in the backyard, and Ozzy got very bored, wandered into the kitchen, picked up a kitchen knife and wandered out and stabbed his aunt's cat. And no apparent reason for it. And it's kind of those sort of incidents. A couple of years later, he tried to hang himself. Again, no apparent reason for it. He also had an argument with his sister, poured petrol over and tried to set fire to her. He tried to strangle one of his brothers. So quite a tormented mind. And he used to become obsessed with death. He would watch his father sleeping. His father worked nights, and so would come home and sleep during the day. And he would go and stand over his father for hours as his father slept, wondering if he was dead or alive. So he kind of got these strange obsessions even as a child.
Because of his weird behaviour and high-pitched singing voice, Ozzy was teased mercilessly by the kids at school. They called him Ozbrain and said he sang like a girl. But his chief tormentor and enemy was the leader of the local street gang, Tony Iommi.
I know that Tony, who's a pretty big guy, Tony's a pretty imposing figure. I mean, Tony's probably, 6'1", and he was always a pretty big guy in really good shape, kind of a dark countenance. He was pretty imposing. I was just kind of a small guy, and Tony used to kick the shit out of Ozzy all the time because he was such a weird guy.
My first job from leaving school was I got a job in a factory fixing car seat slides, making those up on an assembly line. Then I had a job tuning car horns.
Ozzy later described this as his first job in music.
Then I had a job slaughtering animals. Then I had a job in a mortuary for a short while, being a porter. And then I started to play rock and roll.
Always insecure, Ozzy's expectations of himself were low, but typically dramatic.
I always thought I'd be a thief or something, I always thought I'd like rob the banks, and all that, be like Bonnie and Clyde. As a kid, I was always a kind of, I was always rebellious. I would always do the opposite to what anybody ever told me to do. It's like my father used to say, if I ever catch you smoking cigarettes, I'll cuff your ears. And I said, the first thing I do was steal his cigarettes, and I'd sit in the bathroom smoking until I was green,
In and out of low-paid jobs, Ozzy began stealing from his neighbours and burgling the local shops. But he wasn't a very competent burglar, and he was soon caught. He'd broken into a women's clothing store while wearing gloves with the fingers cut off. Ozzy did his time here in Winson Green Prison. His collection of tattoos all over his body, now almost his trademark, dates from this time. He did the famous letters OZZY on his knuckles himself. Then he did a smiley face on each knee for something cheerful to look at when he woke up.
Most of the arguments in my house were purely over lack of money, and my mother would never have enough, and my father would never be able to afford to give her enough. And so I thought to myself, if I could only have money, all these arguments would stop. And then I thought, well, how can I make money? I always thought about robbing banks. I thought about stealing it. I thought, my first job I earned £2. I think in them days it was 17 and 6pence a week. And then the Beatles came out. When the Beatles came out, they came from Liverpool. I thought, that's it, music. I was totally sucked in by the Beatles.
Borrowing some money his dad scraped together, Ozzy started advertising his services as a singer for hire. Ozzy Zig, singer, has own amp, read the ads in the corner shop. Geezer Butler, a guitarist, joined up with him, but their band, Rare Breed, played only 2 gigs. Thrown by the name Zig, the next musician to reply to Ozzy's ad was none other than his school days enemy, Tony Iommi. A truce was called, and Tony and his drummer, Bill Ward, hooked up with Ozzy and Geezer. The new band was named Polka Tulk by Ozzy. Later, a new name emerged, Earth. Through performing here at Henry's Blues House above the Crown Pub, they gained themselves a strong local following, and their first manager, Jim Simpson, the club's founder.
We used to rehearse in a place across the road from a cinema. And there was a horror film on or something, and I think Tony Iommi said it. Isn't it strange that people pay money to be frightened? To see these horrible, gory films. And why don't we try and put that to a musical thing, you know? To a horror music. And that's kind of how it evolved. In fact, it was like we opened a can of worms that we really didn't realise what we'd done because after the first album, we started getting invites from real witches to like attend. Would you mind playing at our party? You know, I mean, because I never realised it was a real thing. I thought it was just hokey pokey.
Their choice of name contributed to the band's growing appeal, but was to lead to many troubles and misunderstandings. But they were nothing compared with some of the locals. Coming downstairs from a gig at Mother's in Erdington, the band and the audience would often be met by Doc Martin wearing skinheads who'd lay into them. These and similar incidents in Glasgow gave rise to the Black Sabbath song, Fairies Wear Boots. As Sabbath's music got heavier and heavier as well as louder, their young fans found in it a reflection of the anger and despair they felt about their lives. Little to look forward to in a time of recession, looked down on as provincial yobs. This was the music of a raging young unemployed working class. Not all flower power, peace and love. It screamed out against the harsh reality Sabbath and their audiences saw all around them. It could also offer an escape into an even darker, grimmer reality. The Railway Tavern on Cardigan Street in Digbeth, not far from one of the abattoirs where Ozzy had worked, offered the young locals a good night out. Cheap beer, people to chat to, some live music. It was here and places like it that Ozzy developed his distinctive vocal style and a lot of his extravagant onstage activities. As Earth, he and the band had played here before and blended in well. But Ozzy, previously a shy singer, was just getting into his stride. Now, angry at not getting the full attention of the crowd or even heard too well over their chatter, Ozzy started to try to get them to notice what Black Sabbath were up to and what he was singing about. There was only one thing for it: turn up the volume on the PA system, push the Sabbath amps to their limits, and then try and sing, yell, scream over the top of it all. Whatever it took and more, Ozzy was prepared to go all the way. The pub-goers who didn't flee to the outer bar were transfixed. The Railway Tavern's walls and those of music pubs around the country began to shake with the sound of heavy metal being born. The beginnings of Black Sabbath's recording career were strangely suburban. It was in the garage of their manager's home that they first put down a few tracks. Song for Jim, a jazzy tribute, was one, but it was their cover version of Evil Woman done as a demo and later released as a single that got them the serious attention.
Ironic fucking thing you should say, that the most weirdest thing, with all this fucking digital and all this technology and all that, you'll be surprised how many guys go to me, how did you get that sound on volume 4? How did you get that sound on the first Black Sabbath album? The first Black Sabbath album was recorded in 12 hours on 2 4-track machines. Just a little garage studio. Which proves the point to me that everybody's striving technologically forward, yet they still want to know how we got the old sound. Proof in the pudding is when you play a record and it don't date.
And some become instant classics. Paranoid.
And lo and behold, first record, slam, bang, it was like one hit, you know, and I thought, that'll do, one hit. I thought I was going to make £1 million and retire happily.
And they might have done after a few hits had their new managers Wilf Pine and Patrick Meehan not pocketed their royalties. Sabbath received only 1,000 of the 250,000 they'd earned on the Cal Jam bill in 1974. Out of desperation, they tried to manage their own careers. But it only caused shifting alliances and factions to appear in the band and inevitably opened the old rift between Tony and Ozzy. They wrangled over their music, but their battles were really about whose band it was, the lead guitarists or the singers.
It's just like we had fun when we were at Sabbath, we'd come off stage and go our own ways, you know. We'd go to his room, I'd go to a bar, someone would go to a strip club, and whatever. And it wasn't about it was just an organisation. It gets boring, because who wants to live 6 to 8 months on the road and not talk to anyone, you know? And backstab everyone. It's an unhealthy situation to be in. It's happened to a lot of bands.
Their music became heavier, their moods darker, and then all hell broke loose. While their albums were hitting the charts, the band was imploding.
We're all fucked up heavily on drugs and alcohol, taking loads of cocaine and loads of booze, and Tony and Naomi had met Ronnie James Dio, and I knew in my heart I'd left once before and I'd rejoined, and I'd left again and I'd rejoined. I knew that it was, my heart wasn't into Black Sabbath, and Sabbath weren't into what I was doing, wanting to do. And at the end of the day, they fired me.
They fired you, is that the true fact?
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to of you quitting and saying, listen, I can't...
I left a couple of times before, but then at the end of the day, they fired me because, you know, it's like my heart wasn't into what it was about, because I can remember on one occasion they were all listening to these other bands, and I said, you know, this is bullshit, you know, and I said, how come the bands that we once influenced are now influencing us? Don't you think we have a real problem here? Everybody was fucked up on drugs anyway, everybody was absolutely, we were doing shitloads of cocaine. I mean, when you take cocaine, you spend the night talking a load of bullshit.
Right.
Waste of fucking money. The world becomes, you think you sound so fucking great. You sit in a room all night long, sniffing this fucking powder, talking utter crap. And we solved all the problems in the world. We worked it all out, but we never did fuck all about it, you know.
We desperately tried to get away from this death, doom and destruction image that we created, but we couldn't because of the name Black Sabbath and because of our mystical connotations that people evolved around us. Because Sabbath became what it is, Black Sabbath, and it was like the cloud of doom was following me around forever. And the fun had gone, and there was no enjoyment in doing what I was doing with them. And besides, we weren't getting on personally, and I just wanted to get out, you know. At first, there was a lot of resentment on both our parts. I think they hated the fact that I was doing things on my own, and I hated the fact that they were carrying the name Black Sabbath, because they should have, as far as I'm concerned, they should have scrapped the name Sabbath and started again. There was a competent players, a good players, and it's like a dead horse, you know. I mean, but a lot of water's gone under the bridge since that day, and I wish them all the luck in the world. I got no bad feelings anymore. At first I did, but not anymore. Because, well, I don't need to have any bad feelings anymore. I suppose if I'd have been a failure, then it might have been a totally different thing.
My father died. I got booted out of Sabbath. My first wife divorced me. And it was, you know, for all the success I've had throughout my career, it's been a very, very well put rock and roll career. He's rocked in these roles, you know.
Holed up in his Los Angeles hotel room, Ozzy was planning his fresh start. But in amongst the litter of pizza boxes, the empty booze bottles and the people who wanted to hang out with the ex-Sabbath singer or help him spend all that money he'd got when he split from the band, Ozzy's plans and strategies for starting a solo career were getting lost. The dreams and the already low self-confidence were slipping and spiralling away.
If I left at first, I thought, well, what am I going to do? Where do I go? I've never auditioned anyone in my life. I didn't have the first idea what to do. And at that time, we never had any management. It's like you're stuck in a big, cruel world, and you're like, where do you go? What's the first step you do? I didn't know how to go about it.
Rescue came in the unlikely form of a debt collector, Sharon Arden, daughter of Sabbath's manager Don. While helping Ozzy to sort out his finances, Sharon started to work on Ozzy's self-neglect. Causing a long-lasting breach with her father, Sharon bought out Ozzy's contract for a reputed $1.5 million. She gave up the management of her other artists and bands and devoted herself totally to Ozzy the man and Ozzy the major rock star she was sure he could be.
He'd just spent 3 months on his own in a hotel room. He basically barricaded himself in a hotel room, drank himself into a stupor every day, took huge amounts of drugs and wouldn't see anybody. And Sharon came along, took him by the scruff of the neck and said, I'm going to sort you out, I'm going to get you back on the road, you're a talented man and you should be out there singing again. And she got him a band together and got him back on the road. And I think Ozzy himself would admit that Sharon is the one responsible for having saved his career and for saving his life. She gave him a purpose again in his life.
Is as close to his wife as anybody I've ever seen in music, in fact, outside of music. There was a time when I thought that it was really just, well, who better to be your manager than your wife? I mean, who are you going to trust more than your wife? And I honestly thought a lot of it had to do with more of a business than a relationship or love thing. But, Sharon was sick recently, and I know the guy. I think if Sharon hadn't pulled through, I think it would have devastated the guy. I think he would have killed himself, to be honest with you.
For performing the new kind of hard rock he wanted to play, Ozzy, with Sharon's help, constructed around himself the image of the madman, sometimes satanic seeming, sometimes the werewolf, always the showman. Ever contradictory, he would become the clown prince of rock and a prince of the dark side. His songs were to deal tongue-in-cheek with religious hypocrisy and honestly, painfully with his struggles with alcoholism and the toll that insanity takes.
My wife says, you're there to make a good record, not a good friend. I like to think at the end of the day I made a great record and a great friend.
He was a pretty, kind of a legendary figure around this town, doing clubs and things. I mean, Randy Rhoads was kind of, you whispered his name in kind of hushed tones. He was one of these guys. Then he got into Ozzy's band, and I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if it was Ozzy rubbing off on Randy, Randy rubbing off on Ozzy, but all of a sudden this guy had a sound and a technique, and I know that his music, that the riffs and the ideas that he was coming up with on guitar drove Ozzy musically. Because Ozzy, I think he plunks around on a keyboard a little bit, but Ozzy doesn't play an instrument. He sings, and he sings melodies. But you could just tell that music was shaped around Randy's guitar playing. That Randy would come in with these licks and these riffs, and it's exactly what Ozzy needed. Randy was nothing like Tony. Randy had all kinds of technique, could do things that Tony couldn't do, and I think that's why it worked. I think had Ozzy, and I think that's why the guy is so unbelievably talented in being able to choose the right musicians to play with. The fact that he was able to see in Randy that this is the guy I need to replace this band that I came out of, Black Sabbath, which isn't a very easy thing to do. I think it's just unbelievable, because I know some other guys who went up for that gig, and these were all unbelievable guitar players. None of them would have worked. None of them, they could play, they had the technique. I don't think any of them had the song sensibilities that Randy had. Randy was a real songwriter. So when he was bringing his riffs and his licks in. They were already in the form of a song, and he would show that stuff to Ozzy, and Ozzy could just sing over that. And it wasn't just bits and pieces that Ozzy had to put together, because I don't really think that Ozzy is really very good at that. I think Ozzy kind of needs something that's kind of done, and then he comes in and does his thing, which is why now he writes with like people like I know Aerosmith is in the studio with him, and all these guys who really have the thing kind of done, and then Ozzy comes in and does his thing. I think that's what Randy brought to him.
With Bob Daisley on bass and Lee Kerslake on drums, Ozzy and Randy, who'd been writing together for it, recorded the album Blizzard of Oz in England. Helped by the hit Crazy Train, this debut disc was a million seller, as were its follow-ups Diary of a Madman and Speak of the Devil. Tragedy struck on March the 19th, 1982, when the band was on tour. During a pit stop, Randy and the band's stylist Rachel Youngblood went for an early morning spin in a light aircraft, piloted by the tour bus driver. The wing of the plane clipped the roof of the bus in which Ozzy was sleeping and then careered into a nearby house and garage where it exploded.
When that day happened, I just could not believe it. I just went blank.
I mean, this is a sick thing to say, but people knowing you and knowing Randy, it's more likely there's something crazy like that. I mean, and I know. You're the one, because Randy...
I know exactly. I mean, if I'd have been up, without a shadow of doubt, I'd have been on that plane with him. Without any shadow of doubt. There's no second thought in my mind about that one. I just think, fucking hell. It's just fate, you know. I believe that fate takes its hand, you know. I mean, I could fucking get up there and have a heart attack and die, you know.
The big guy wanted his guitar playing.
I know, there's some band up there needed a good guitar player, man.
That's the way I look at it.
He hated flying, and the woman, the seamstress woman, who was about 58, Rachel, she had a weak heart, so she wouldn't want to be doing aerobatics, would she? They just went up to take a quick ride and land, just straight into the bus, trashed her in seconds. They wouldn't have known a thing about it, mate. It was like gone, just quick as that. Because not only was the thing we all witnessed it, we had to go to the thing of seeing the parents and the relations and explain it again and again and again and again to people, and then the fucking funeral, and you get half a dozen groupies in the fucking church, and it was just... I mean, I just felt like, I don't know, it was like a fucking Fellini movie.
A gap which couldn't be filled was left in Ozzy's life and his band by Randy's death.
In Black Sabbath, there was a lot of internal torment in the group, particularly towards the end. And what he'd found with Randy Rhoads was a guitarist who was just on his wavelength, somebody who was a friend, who he liked as a brother, as well as a guitarist. And when Randy died, Ozzy was distraught. He didn't want to go on. He wanted to end touring there and then. And Sharon basically said to him, "You've got to keep going." That's what Randy would have wanted. She knew that if Ozzy stopped, he would never start again. And she also knew it would destroy him, because without music, he would go off the rails even further. So she knew he had to keep performing, but it took him a long time to get over it.
Going back to work afterwards was in itself quite an achievement for Ozzy. Sharon was there to help recruit musicians for him who would be there for him too, as well as deliver the goods musically. Zakk Wylde, another talented guitarist, is one of them.
Zack's come in and out of Ozzy's life several times. Ozzy gives him the leeway to do what he wants. Part of me understands Zakk wanting to create a name for himself as the head of his own band as a singer-songwriter. He's actually a very talented guy. He's a very good songwriter. It's hard to tell how much songwriting Zakk does in the context of what Ozzy does, because all you really hear is Ozzy Osbourne. So sometimes it's hard to look beyond the voice to hear, the actual songwriting and the arranging that's going on. But I know that Zakk has a lot to do with that. So I know that Ozzy does give him leeway, and I know that Zakk has made 5 or 6 records now with his own various bands. Has never done anything with them. In the same way that Ozzy needs Zakk, Zakk needs Ozzy. There's something about Zakk on his own. He's the same guitar player. He's playing the same style guitar and writing the same types of songs. But for some reason, Zach singing his own songs, it doesn't quite work.
Zach plays on Ozzy's albums when needed or appears on an Ozfest bill with his own band, Black Label Society. Zach's band may take its name from a whiskey grade, but nowadays for Ozzy, the connection with drink and drugs appears to be less and less strong.
I mean, I should be dead 1,000 times over. I've OD'd fucking more times than I mean, every time I used to go out, I wouldn't go for a social drink. I'd go to get fucking drowned in this. Every time I did cocaine, it wasn't a night. It wasn't a fucking ground. It was like a football field for me, you know.
Ozzy's a man who, for some reason, cannot say no. It's just he has an inability to say no. So, presented with every kind of drug on offer to rock bands in the 70s, he would take them all and everything that was offered. The other members of the band and other members of rock bands at that time would experiment and certainly would drink to excess, take drugs. But Ozzy didn't have an off switch. He never knew when to stop, and so he always went further than everybody else.
Ozzy's wild excesses and extreme behaviour have passed down into legend.
My first wife, I treated terribly because I was permanently drunk. I wasn't a very good husband, and so the same with Sharon. And I'm truly and honestly sorry for the things I've put these both people through. I mean, I'm lucky I've got my wife still. I mean, I don't know whether you recall that a couple of years ago I went nuts and attacked my wife and tried to, so they say, try to kill her. But I have no memory of that.
Ozzy's tried very hard to give up drink. I think he's been to 14 different rehabilitation clinics in his life, and Sharon tries very hard to help him, but at the end of the day it's got to come from within, and he comes out of the clinics and he gives up for a certain period of time, but then something happens. He either goes on tour or he gets bored or he gets angry. Something happens and it triggers him off and he starts to drink again.
I said to my wife, did you ever think that I would quit? She says, darling, she said, I thought I would be burying an alcohol, not practicing alcohol. I expected the phone to ring any day and somebody to say, he's dead.
Some of Sharon's efforts at keeping Ozzy away from the booze and out of harm's way were less successful than others.
In the 80s he was drinking and taking a lot of drugs, and he was on a solo tour of America, and Sharon at that time was trying to get him to stop drinking, and so one of the things she did was she would steal all his clothes, or hide them, take them out of the hotel room. So when he got up, there were no clothes, so he couldn't leave the hotel room and go out drinking. And she thought this was a foolproof thing to do. Ozzy, of course, just went through the wardrobe and took one of Sharon's dresses and went out dressed in one of her dresses, got drunk, and then remembered that he was due at the Alamo to do a picture session with a photographer and a reporter. So he turned up late and very, very drunk. And the pictures took quite a long time, as pictures do. And Ozzy needed the loo, and of course there were no loos, so he saw what he thought was a bit of old wall and went and relieved himself. And next thing he knows, there's people screaming the place down, calling him every name under the sun. The armed police turned up, and he was carted off and spent the night in a cell. Still quite bemused. He didn't really understand what he'd done.
This unintended, unpatriotic gesture got him banned from playing in San Antonio again for years. It wasn't to be the only misunderstanding to cause serious problems for Ozzy.
When I left Black Sabbath, I continued the sort of crazy Manhattan kind of horror type image. It's more or less a spin-off of Sabbath, you know. It was my own little thing, you know, my creation.
Well, there's no big thing about it. It's just all I am. I mean, what you see on an album cover, I mean, it's like you say, does Christopher Lee run around the house with bangs? You know, it's like when I'm off stage, and when I'm not working, I'm not working. But that's my way. That's what I'm into. I'm into sort of the horror movies.
Do you feel like you're promoting people?
No, not at all. I mean, it's just a role. It's like you could say that about any horror film you see. For some unknown reason, people like to be frightened. People like to go and see The Exorcist 15 times. People like to get going and hold on tight. Can I get through this movie? Can I get through this? That's all I'm doing is giving them what they want. I'm not trying to twist people's minds. I'm not trying to make them into devil worshippers. I mean, you take anything you want to take and you twist it down to whatever you want to make out of it. And you can make whatever you want out of it, you know. You take, I mean, for years when I was in South, we used to get handed my Bible of Jesus freaks. And they'd get a Bible and cross out certain paragraphs in the Bible, and you'd stick them together. You'd say, "You will die when you do." You can do that with any. You can do that with any book you want to make anything out of anything.
One of the saddest points of Ozzy's life was when he was blamed for the suicide of one of his fans, well, several of his fans actually. Various court cases came to light. One of his young fans had shot himself while listening to one of Ozzy's songs, Suicide Solution, and this came to light a couple of years later, and Ozzy was sued, and various other cases came forward, and he found it a very difficult time. He was accused of having hidden messages in his songs, of encouraging people to try and kill themselves, and he found it very difficult because as Ozzy sees it, he writes songs which are just music, and he feels that you've got a license to write about what you want, and that the way a poet would write about what they wanted, a novelist would, and wouldn't necessarily be held accountable for the death of somebody who read the book and then killed themselves. He felt that, you know, he wasn't sending out satanic messages.
Anybody who interpreted that song that way has no idea what Ozzy's about, what Sabbath was about. They saw the Dungeons and Dragons and the, you know, the pentagrams and all that stuff. I think these people truly believe that Ozzy and the rest of these guys believe in that, which is about as far from the truth as it gets. At his core, I think he's a very genuinely sensitive and honest and open guy. I think he's a very emotional guy. He's a family guy. He's got children. He just wouldn't write a song like that. And in fact, I think that he said that the song Solution was actually talking about an actual liquid, a suicide solution. I think he was saying that drinking is bad. So in essence, certainly you could drink yourself to death, but he's saying, don't do that. Don't do what I did, which has always been Ozzy's thing. You see him on the TV show and he talks to his children. Listen, I did this thing, you know. I can't stop you from doing it, but just don't do what I did. He doesn't have it in him to write a song about suicide being a solution.
People get my music so wrong in the respect that they think it's like they judge the book by the cover. If they would only listen to some of my music, I mean, on my first Blizzard of Oz album, I wish some of these so-called people that are putting me down and saying I'm a satanic, devil-worshipping, twisted of minds for kids and all this, would listen to the words of Revelation Mother Earth, and just listen to them.
People weren't listening to his music, and when they did, it was backwards, which is how they played it, in the hopes of finding some hidden satanic message. They found none, but it turned into a witch hunt. These were people outraged by his look and his stage persona, with little or no knowledge of music. Ozzy's stage shows have always generated outrage along with the excitement and wonder. The rousing strains of O Fortuna herald his arrival on stage. Raw meat is catapulted into the crowd, then driving hard rock, madness and mayhem ensue. But one particular onstage incident, blown up out of all proportion, continues to plague and misrepresent Ozzy and what he and his work are really about.
Somebody threw a bat on stage and I picked the bat up, bit on it, and it was the shot so brave as I had to do after. I thought it was one of those plastic things, you know, you can buy from a sort of Halloween shop or whatever. And I bit into the head and I thought, this is weird. And then I suddenly saw my wife on the side of the stage with her holding her face, and then she said it was a real bat and I had to go to hospital.
At that time, people were throwing plastic bats and plastic rats onto the stage, and the bat was lying stunned. It wasn't moving. Somebody had thrown it up on the stage. It was a bit dazzled by the lights, and Ozzy picked it up. It didn't move, and he bit into it and then realised, of course, that it was alive and was rushed off for anti-rabies injections after the show. Ozzy maintains to this day he didn't know that it was alive, and I think he's telling the truth, because he's no reason to make it up. I mean, it would almost add to his reputation if he had known. So I think it was a genuine mistake. He was quite horrified by it. and the anti-rabies injections were very unpleasant. So it was something I think he wouldn't want to repeat.
The fallout from the bat incident, what was in effect a prank gone wrong, is still evident. Another stunt, admittedly devised for its publicity value, also went shockingly wrong, but considerably right for Ozzy and his career.
He bit the head off a live dove, which was a publicity stunt, and he and Sharon both admit that. What had happened was Ozzy was just trying to launch his solo career in America, and the American record executives weren't taking that much notice of him. They'd got him on board, but they weren't really doing a great deal to promote him. Sharon felt that they weren't doing enough. So she and Ozzy stayed up late one night. They'd got a big meeting with the record executives, and they tried to dream up a publicity stunt that would get them noticed. And they hit on this idea of Ozzy walking into the room with 3 doves in his pockets and releasing them in the air, and there'd be a photographer there and the photographer would take pictures. And Ozzy joked with Sharon as they stayed up into the small house talking about it that he would bite the head off one of the doves. And Sharon maintains to this day that she thought that was just Ozzy joking. I think knowing Ozzy as she knows him, she might have guessed that he actually intended to go through with it. But the next day, he was very nervous before the meeting, and he drank the best part of a bottle of whiskey. So he turned up drunk with the doves, released a couple into the air as agreed, and then took the third one out and bit its head off and threw the remainder of the body down on the table in front of the executives, who were naturally horrified and called security, and he was thrown out of the building. They said never come back. But the pictures were released, the story got out, the American media went crazy, animal lovers all over America went crazy, and it really launched his career in the sense, relaunched it as a solo artist, because he was suddenly this notorious figure. And there were protests at all his concerts, and of course that just attracted more publicity and made more people want to go and see him, and he's never looked back.
We've all made mistakes. It says in the Bible that he who's without sin casts the first stone. We've all made a mistake. But the bottom line is that everyone's so quick to pull everyone else's skeleton out the closet, But we've all got them. So, everyone's allowed one screw up in their life, But I've made about 5 million, every day.
I'm my own worst enemy, I'm my own worst critic. It's never good enough. I don't sing good. My band sucks, and my management sucks. The agent's a joke. And it's like I'm fighting everybody, including myself. That's the way I am,
The way Ozzy is, with all his quirks and misdemeanours, confuses him and outrages many. But more still are attracted by the publicity he generates. Seeing or hearing Ozzy, they are hooked, and the feeling is mutual.
One of the things I've learned over the years is that my heart, I believe in my heart, I believe in my spirit, my driving force. And more than anything else, I believe in my audience.
Reviews of his recordings in the early days of his solo career were patchy. Later, they were very mixed, though most critics seem to agree that his music was tighter, sharper, and more volatile than in his Sabbath days.
If I ever believed in what the press writes about me, or write about it, I'd pack in, because I've never had a good thing said about me since I started, and yet I've been doing it for 14 years now, pretty successfully,
But Ozzy is also his own worst critic.
Every record that I ever put out, I'm always apprehensive. Every record I have ever made, I've never 100% liked.
Wow.
The reason why I keep striving forward is because I'm always looking for something which I don't really know what I'm looking for. So it always leaves a void. And the day ever comes and goes, I go, Ozzy, this album is fucking faultless. You've finally done it. I think that will be the end of the day. I'm always looking for... somebody can say to me, Ozzy, that record is fucking great. And I'll go, what part of that record is yours? I, in my head, paint a picture. And I have the greatest difficulty in getting that picture out of my head onto vinyl.
What did get onto vinyl, CD and tape was eagerly snapped up by record buyers. From Osmosis to Bark at the Moon to Diary of a Madman, sales escalated, helped by Ozzy's relentless touring and the attention-grabbing videos. The musicians in his band and those who guested with him ensured value-for-money entertainment and great artistry. Ozzy chose well.
Is Ozzy Osbourne the world's greatest singer? I don't think so. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. But if you look through musicians' magazines and you talk to singers and songwriters as who have been a major influence on you, I mean, Ozzy's name comes up. It's just so many times. I mean, he's created this style. It's a very simple style of singing, and he always doubles his parts on record, so he sings a part, then he'll go in and lay a double over, so he gets this big fat sound. That's a sound that he's created that everybody from, you know, kind of Papa Roach to Metallica do. I mean, he's created a lot of things. But he'd be the first to tell you, no, I'm not the greatest singer. I'm certainly not an actor. But for him, it just all works.
Ozzy's delivery of his songs on stage is masterful. His honesty in his songwriting and his craftsmanship have long been acclaimed. But for him, studio work is another matter.
We're terrible in the studio. The last album I did with Sabbath must have cost somewhere in the region of £500,000 because we went to Canada to record it for a tax judge because the taxes are so high in England. And it was freezing cold in January, so we couldn't go out anywhere. And in the studio we were there for 3 months. We recorded 2 tracks off the album. We hadn't written the album before we'd gone in it. Sabbath's favourite trick was to say, oh, we got to start recording on so-and-so and not write the songs and write them in the studio, which is a waste of time and money. Because I hate recording, if you don't know the truth. I hate being locked in the studio for months. So, and now I make it a point of mine to write the stuff, go in and record them as fast as I possibly can and as basic as I possibly can. So therefore I can record most of it as near as damn it on stage. Play as near as damn it on stage as it sounds on record, you know. Because Sabbath got to a point where it became like a machine that you got so many, and now in a recording studio you can sound like anything. There's so many gadgets and different things you can push things through, and you can't reproduce it on stage, and it fails miserably. And I refuse to do the new stuff because it was just chemical music, you know.
Ever self-critical, Ozzy sets himself high targets of excellence in his music and makes great demands on himself as an artist.
When I'm touring, I want to be at home. When I'm home, I want to be touring, so I'm never satisfied.
The thing that motivates Ozzy more than anything in his life is music. He loves to make music and he loves to tour. And I think Ozzy will be touring until the day he dies. They'll be wheeling him on stage in a wheelchair. He did try retirement very brief in the 90s and was bored rigid and went back on the road again. He's a very wealthy man now. He's a millionaire several times over. So he doesn't tour for the money. He tours because to him that's what being a rock star is about. And I think he doesn't know what he would do if he stopped because he loves it so much.
Retirement sucks, as Ozzy called his triumphal return tour. But being off work did have its compensations.
3 years that I was off the road and out of the recording studio and away from the business gave me the one time the chance to be a father for a while, to actually live in a house for a while, to be in one place for a while, to appreciate what I'm about. And it's like the old saying goes, you never know what you've had until you've lost it.
He found in Sharon and their daughters Amy and Kelly and son Jack the perfect mutual support system. But domesticity and the need to get out and entertain were bound to cause conflict for Ozzy, especially as he was trying desperately to stay off the booze and the drugs. The solution? Being at home in your own travelling tour show and being in your own TV show in the comfort of your family home. Ozzy and Sharon have come up with 2 brilliant concepts. The first, Ozfest, the international multi-million-dollar heavy rock festivals come tours, which launched in 1996. The second is The Osbournes, MTV's highest ratings ever series about their dysfunctional family life.
I've been doing this over 30 years now, and the audience from where I'm standing, I never go, oh, he's my age, he's younger than me, he's older than me. It's just a load of people. I go to that young kid, he goes, this is the best day of my life, and they say, well, how long is your life? He goes, 11 years, and I go, Christ. It really rings home, you know.
It's crazy. I never had any expectations of the show. If anything, I thought it was going to be a flop and people wouldn't like it. Because I don't understand, you know, why people like our family so much. And then, like, the ratings just get higher and higher every week, and it's crazy to me.
It's a family, and, you know, none of us would be anything without my husband. And my husband is the nucleus of the whole thing.
Ozzy is not one to hog the limelight when it comes to his family. Perhaps because it wasn't paranoid that his daughter Kelly chose for her successful recording debut.
I'm handing the torch on to my daughter, which I'm really proud of, for doing such a wonderful job of Madonna's song, Prophet Don't Preach. And the song You Really Got Me by the Kings was, in my opinion, the first ever heavy metal riff that I ever heard. I bought that record as a young guy, and I played it to death.
When you watch Ozzy on the Osbournes dishing out advice to his kids, it's very funny to watch because he is actually trying his best. He is trying to be a good dad and to be a normal dad, and of course that's what's funny, Ozzy trying to be a normal anything. I mean, he's trying to stop his kids doing all the things he did. In one episode of the Osbournes, he hits the roof when his daughter Amy comes home with a tiny little tattoo. Now, of course, Ozzy's covered head to toe in tattoos. He puts a curfew on them and says you've got to be home by a certain time, which, again, sounds sensible. It's what dads do. But then you discover that the curfew is actually 2 a.m. and these are only 16, 17-year-old teenagers.
Audiences around the world have voted Ozzy the TV Dad of the Year, something as unimaginable a few years ago as Ozzy and Black Sabbath getting together again.
What was it like playing with Black Sabbath and your solo band at the Ozfest? I mean,
hard fucking work, man. But I'll tell you one thing. I've played with some great guitar players, some great drummers, and some great bass players.
Great bands.
But you know, nobody played Black Sabbath like the four of us.
That's exactly right.
It's just a fucking chemistry that it's like nobody can play the Beatles better than the Beatles, you know. Nobody can play the Rolling Stones better than the Rolling Stones.
For years, relations had remained strained between Ozzy and Sabbath, which had continued to perform and record with Glenn Hughes and Ronnie Dio. Their last tour with Ozzy in 1978 had been the Never Say Die tour. This could also be Ozzy's motto, along with Never Say Never.
I buried the hatchet. I made friends with the people that I never thought I'd ever speak to again the rest of my life. And I'll never say never again because, you know, life's too short.
It seemed that the wheel had turned full circle when Ozzy rejoined the band in their hometown of Birmingham for a supercharged historic weekend of concerts in 1997. He was the drunken, drug-crazed loser who was booted out of the band. Now he's returned as the superstar.
I don't know if Ozzy's becoming more mainstream. I don't think Ozzy's really ever changed. I think if you look at the first Sabbath record and what he does now, I think there's a thread that goes through his writing and what he's done. His image has never changed. He still wears the same kinds of clothes. I honestly, I think the world's gotten a little more twisted, and Ozzy stayed the same.
In a twist that Ozzy must relish on the Local Boy Makes Good story, Birmingham, in its bid for status as European City of Culture 2008, has asked him to be its cultural figurehead. But it seems that the world has changed, and it's catching up with Ozzy.
When I was a young man, I had lots of dreams. When the Beatles happened, I used to dream over the fifth Beatle and all that, you know. And all I can say to people, if you have a dream, that dreams is what it's all about.
Think Ozzy, think culture, think bad lad from Birmingham, sings for the Queen and takes tea with President Bush.
I think there's a little bit of Ozzy in a lot of people, you know. Everyone would like to be Ozzy for an hour, you know, just to do something wild.